And hello, everyone. Happy Friday night. Welcome to the Prof Show. Tonight's show is called Delphi, Why Ricci Davis Matters, Part 3. And this will be Part 3 of a 4-part series. So welcome on in. I'm so glad to see everybody. We're going to get right on into the show tonight after I greet everyone. And I'm glad to see everybody. Apologize for the delay. There was a little technical difficulty getting started, but we are ready to go. And so let everybody know we're here. Share this right now. We'll be getting started momentarily. Thanks for being here. And I can't wait to get into the show tonight. You're going to enjoy it. All right, and we are here tonight, and thank you for being here. Hey, I sincerely apologize for the delay. You don't understand the technical difficulties with the audio. So I've been trying for an hour to get my audio working properly. Uh, I had a different plan for tonight's show, and it required a different audio setup. And wouldn't you know it? So, firstly, I had a lot of trouble getting that audio together, that setup that I needed to have set up. And when that fell through, tried getting my uh, solo setup together, and then I had trouble with that. So now that all that is done, hopefully you're hearing me clearly and we're ready to go. But happy Friday, everyone. I guess thank God it's Friday. I don't know. And welcome to the memberships, 26 Dead Zombies, dude. I appreciate that. Every little support helps, and that does help, and that is support. So appreciate that. Well, welcome in Four Pits. I want to say welcome in Claremont, Deb, Quietly, Dennis McKean, David Rogers, American Night Mom, Critter Mama, Nicole Watt, L Bean, Old Mort, New Mort, Mustang, Silence Woman. You know, everyone who's here, truly appreciate you being here. Mama Trish, welcome. And if I missed you, apologize. Just leave your name down below. But I'm ready to get started because what we're going to be doing tonight, I've been going back over, okay, other people's attempt to debunk Ricci Davis, discredit Ricci Davis, cry and whine about Ricci Davis, and try to all the people who have been trying to distract you from the things that Ricci Davis has said, with all of the personal attacks, the slander, the defamation, the discrediting, and the distracting you from Kagan Klein and Ron Logan, the two main players that Ricci has come forward to whistleblow on. In addition to that, the same players out there who are trying so hard for the state to turn you away from Ricci Davis's information, or should I say, from Keegan Klein and Ron Logan's involvement in the Delphi murders, they're also attempting to pigeonhole you into these Odinists. So a very odd phenomenon is that, or phenomenon is that people are trying to hyperfixate you on the Odinist, as relayed in the Frank's Memorandum by Andy Baldwin, but they're trying to focus you on the Odinist from the Frank's Memorandum as being involved in the Delphi murders, but they're trying to push you away from any concept or inclusion of Ron Logan and Kagan Klein and potentially Tony Klein as alternative suspects. And I always feel like I need to remind everybody when they do that to go back to the defense's push to have these third-party suspects included in the trial of Richard Allen, which would have been extremely important. And what you guys need to understand is that from the very beginning, the defense team of Richard Allen was fighting extremely hard to get Keegan Klein, Ron Logan, Tony Klein, and all of the third-party suspects mentioned in the Frank's Memorandum, who you call the Odinist, brought into this trial. And I furthermore feel like I don't need to remind you that Judge Gull and Nicholas McClellan did all they could to obstruct the full picture from being told to the jurors in the Richard Allen trial. And it's largely due to the exclusion of all of these third-party suspects that the prosecution was successful. And always remember, the prosecutor or prosecutors were aided by the judge in this case, which is extremely uh, uh, inappropriate. This judge was very heavy handed and totally supported the prosecution in all of this, totally supported the state police, the Carroll County sheriffs, and the unified command in all of this, and intentionally ignored the other law enforcement officers and the FBI who had done a substantial amount of work in the years prior to Richard Allen's arrest. And despite the fact that everything in the Franks Memorandum derives from FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit, FBI investigation, and law enforcement investigation via Kevin Murphy, Greg Ferenczi, and Todd Click, despite all of that being substantial information derived from law enforcement's investigation and the FBI and not pulled out of thin air like the guilt or bloodlusters will have you believe, the state fought tooth and nail to keep that information outside of the purview of the jurors, and also was facilitated by some lying ass cops and a scumbag prosecutor, and they successfully achieved hiding all of this information from the jury by being facilitated from the or by the judge. And so we're in a situation now in which the jury did not hear but a small portion of this investigation and story. I would say about 25%, which means 75% was hidden from the jury, which, if you're a juror, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about attempting to provide some sort of justice for two young murder victims and being lied to by the state in their presentation of this case, having information withheld from you, and having a whole contingent of individuals out here pre-trial trying to influence your thoughts and your understanding of this, during trial continuing to propagandize for the state and keep you from considering this, and then after trial, all the way up until this very month, they have been fighting extremely hard, and I mean those narrative pushers on the internet, to continuously keep your eyes away from Keegan Kline, Ron Logan, and all of the other third-party suspects mentioned in the Franks Memorandum. And I would ask you to look back to the infamous 3-day hearing in the Richard Allen trial. This 3-day hearing in which all of this was argued. And keep in mind, after all of this, the defense was barred from even mentioning a single individual, even referencing them at all. Never mind presenting evidence. The mere mention of their names was disallowed. So I think it's important to continuously reiterate this information because this is very important information. It provides the full view of all that was investigated, of all that is known, and all that surfaced both before, during, and after the trial of Richard Allen. And the fact that they're fighting so hard to keep you distracted from Keegan Kline, Ron Logan, and the other third-party suspects should really tell you something. And hey, I recommend you go look at these bloodluster guilty demon channels and see what they're pushing now. Go look at these bloodluster guilty demon unsanitary scumbag podcasters and see what they've been pushing. And think to yourself, hey, if Keegan Kline, Ron Logan, and the Frank's memorandum third-party suspects are nothing and were nothing, why in the world would these bloodluster guilty demons, uh, or guilter demons, be so fixated on debunking any sort of consideration of Ron Logan, Keegan Kline, and the third-party suspects mentioned in the Frank's memorandum, who you call the Odinists? So, with that being said, I thought that the best way to round out our explication of Ricci Davis's revelations, which we've been covering in this series, was to review the documentation. Now, I've made some new discoveries in this documentation. We're going to talk about that tonight. Now, keep in mind that in the first two episodes, we heard from Ricci Davis himself in terms of reviewing my discussions with him. And in a forthcoming episode, we will be hearing again from Ricci Davis, because Ricci Davis and I have had additional conversations. And we're particularly interested in addressing all of the falsehoods, the slandering, and the bullshit that the state actors and Bollickers are pushing. So, with that being said, tonight will be an important show for all of us to take in, so that we can, I guess, have a good handle or understanding on where things were in the trial record, so that you understand what's gone into this appeal. Because although the specific allegations and points are not specifically referenced in the appellate filing, the trial record and the case record in totality is in the hands of the appellate process. So as these appellate judges are reviewing this case, they must take into consideration the totality of the documentation. And this is the very important piece of, or a very important piece of, the totality. Now, I've said before, and Ricci has said before, that you have to also keep in mind that there's some aspects of Ricci Davis's evidence that he has brought forward that has not yet been publicly released. And there's a reason for that, because there's a very high likelihood that this evidence will be of use in the future in the ongoing legal process for Richard Allen. For instance, if a new trial is required, this will certainly, this new evidence, which is still not been disclosed, will come into play in the new trial. And should that not be, then there's a post-conviction relief scenario, and there's also further Supreme Court potentialities. So in totality, looking forward into the future, we have to be mindful of the potential usefulness of additional information that Ricci Davis has not yet disclosed to the public. And we have to, I guess, continue to be reticent to throw any wrench in the plans. So with that in mind, I thought that our time tonight could be best spent by doing a review and a discussion about some of the truth of Ricci Davis's part of this trial, or trial record, because this is important. And as we go through this, I will do my best to stop when necessary and elaborate on some details. Now, as I mentioned, keep in mind that there's been a lot of propaganda and narrative control around these particular aspects. Because remember, part of Ricci Davis's assertions are that one, Nicholas McClellan is alleged to have had a close, friendly relationship with Ron Logan. Two, Kathy Shank's daughter declared herself to have had an extremely close relationship with Ron Logan. Three, we've heard from Ron Logan's ex some further evidence on Ron Logan. Okay. Four, we've had multiple independent individuals come forward regarding Keegan Kline. Five, there have been alleged confessions from both Ron Logan, which was documented, and Keegan Kline, which was documented. So, with all of that, there's a very large amount of concerning context to this entire scenario. And so, with all of those things considered, we have to look at this case record and understand what's in black and white, contextualize it, and then put ourselves in a position to be able to answer the gaslighting that is coming from the bootlicker, guilt or demon crowd, and also the distractors. Remember, there's been a lot of drama on these YouTube streets this year. And I want to remind you all that this drama really popped off after our mid-February bombshell disclosures about Ricci Davis's testimony. And I'd ask you all to reflect and consider about the times when drama and distractions get kicked up in the smear campaigns. And every single time that you see this drama kick up into high gear, go to 100%, there's a reason, because drama is distracting. Okay. So what you see is you see certain parties pushing information, attempting to deflect from Ron Logan, Keegan Kline, and the Frank's Memorandum third-party suspects. Then you see other people come forward and attempt to distract by means or by way of drama. And all of that comes into play because this is a comprehensive narrative control campaign. And listen, what does it matter to anyone out there if Ron Logan or Keegan Kline were involved in the Delphi murders? Unless you hold some specific allegiance to Ron Logan, Keegan Kline, or any of their family members. So it's very interesting that when you're asking others to have an open mind, you would sit there with a closed mind and say, don't talk about Keegan Kline. Don't talk about Ron Logan. Don't talk about their family members, and don't talk about their relationships with the people out here prosecuting this case, investigating this case, and running the narrative control campaigns all over the internet around this case. So I'm the type of person that every time you tell me or show me what you don't want me to talk about, I am sure to talk about it. And because of this pushback on Keegan Kline and Ron Logan, I am absolutely determined to continue to talk about Keegan Kline and Ron Logan because I'm concerned and I think there's something there. And Ricci Davis has proof that there's something there. And if there wasn't anything there, I would argue that you would not see any of the clear attempts at countering the points that Ricci Davis has come forward with. Now, does any of us know exactly what happened in this crime? No, unless we were there. But are we able to nevertheless take in all the information with an open mind and see what actually sticks, see what makes sense? Yes, hopefully, unless you're here in bad faith with ill intentions. So, with that being said, I guess I'd like to jump on in. I see some of you guys are saying you're having issues in the YouTube universe. Maybe that's a YouTube problem tonight. I apologize for that. Anytime you have an issue, go back out, close it down, and come right back in. And we'd appreciate that. And if you're new here, hey, welcome. Come on and join the live chat. Or if you've already missed the live stream, leave your comments down below. We have so many wonderful people in this community. So get to know them, discuss with them, ask questions if you have questions, and make your points if you have points. Open discussion is always encouraged here, and good faith debate is welcomed. Okay? So I'd encourage all of that for all of you. And anyhow, with that being said, let's take a deep dive tonight into the case record revolving around Ricci Davis. And we're going to kick this off tonight with an important document. Let's see. Now, I'd like to say before we get into this too deeply, everything we're going to be looking at tonight is coming from one centralized document which all of you and any of you could have access to, and that's the appendix for the appellate filing. And the title of it, for those of you who want to dig into this yourself, is Appellate's Appendix, Volume 1 of 13. Okay? So again, Appellant's Appendix, Volume 1. No, I'm sorry about that. I'm lying. It's Volume 12. There I go. There I go. Apologize for that. Back it up. We're actually going to be accessing documents that are part of the appellant record. And this particular document is Appellant's Appendix, Volume 12 of 13. Okay, Volume 12 of 13. And just a heads up, this thing is, I want to say this thing is about 250 pages. Okay, so Appellant's Appendix Volume 12 is about a 250 page document which catalogs and collects and gathers much of this information. And so we're going to kick it off tonight with this one, which is coming from Volume 12, which is called Defendant's Verified Motion to Preserve and Produce Specific Evidence. And you can see at the top of the page, this was filed February 14th, 2025. Okay? February 14th, 2025. So let's see how good we can get started here. Okay, I think we're good to go. Now, just before we get into this, I'd like to remind you that this is truly not the first step. The actual first mention of Ricci Davis that was significant was a small portion of the motion to correct error. So, if you're truly interested, you can include that in your studies. However, motion to correct errors is pretty flimsy. It's pretty scant on the information regarding Ricci Davis's whistleblowing. And so, for sake of brevity and to save time, we're going to forego that for tonight and dive right into this one because this will give us all we need regarding that. And as I mentioned, as I go through this, we'll periodically, stop and comment on things to clarify. Okay. Yeah, I'll save it. Okay. So, for context for everyone, and if you're taking notes, these are some important dates here. It says on February 12, 2025, Richard Allen's counsel, Andy Baldwin, met with Ricci Davis at Newcastle Correctional Facility. During their meeting, Mr. Davis informed Attorney Baldwin of the following: that he was in a unique position of having met both Keegan Kline and Ron Logan. He talked with Ron Logan about the Delphi murders on multiple occasions. Over the course of time, Logan confessed to his own involvement in the murders, along with 2 other people at a minimum. During the conversations, Logan provided certain details of the crime that only the killer would know, but never divulged who the other 2 people involved in the murders were. Ricci Davis says that in or around March 2024, Keegan Kline was placed in the same general area as he was, and at some point learned that Ricci Davis had talked to him or to Ron Logan while Logan was incarcerated at Newcastle. Over time, Kline began questioning Ricci Davis as to his conversations with Ron Logan and whether Logan ever mentioned him. Ricci began to realize that Kline may have been one of the other members of the crew that Logan described. Over time, Kline began to reveal information about the Delphi murders that corroborated details Ron Logan had revealed. Some of the details Keegan Kline provided are the types of details that would only be known by someone involved in the killings. These conversations between Ricci and Keegan Kline occurred all the way up to the guilty verdict, at which time Kline expressed his relief that he would no longer be a viable suspect in the murders due to Richard Allen's conviction. Not knowing whether Richard Allen could be the 3rd person involved in the murders, Ricci Davis asked Keegan Kline whether Mr. Allen was the 3rd person involved in the murders. Kline replied that Richard Allen indeed was not the 3rd person involved in the murders and had nothing to do with the murders. Keegan Kline further revealed that he and Logan knew each other through the sharing of child pornography that they shared on burner phones, and further that Kline and Logan would see each other every 3 to 6 months so that Kline could assist Logan with using the burner phones because Logan was inept working them. Ricci Davis further explained that once Keegan Kline began revealing his role in the murders, sometime in the summer and fall of 2024, before Richard Allen's trial, that Ricci began sending letters to Nick McClelland providing many of the details of his conversations with Keegan Kline in 2024 and Ron Logan in 2017. Ricci Davis indicated that he believes he sent as many as 7 or 8 letters to McClelland's office and presumed that McClelland was sharing the contents of those letters with Richard Allen's defense team. And just as an aside here, Ricci Davis has since then clarified that yes, he did send as many as 7 or 8 letters. However, those letters were packaged in groupings so that he may send 3 letters in one envelope, another 3 in another envelope, and another 3 in an envelope, and so on and so forth. So that although there may be 7 or 8 letters, there's only potentially 3 envelopes. Now, Mr. Baldwin's first meeting with Ricci Davis was on March 27th, 2024, nearly a year prior to this conversation we're talking about now. On that March 27th, 2024 meeting, Mr. Baldwin learned very limited information from Ricci Davis, who encouraged Baldwin to watch a videotaped interview law enforcement, and that means Jerry Holman, had conducted with him years earlier. Now, at their 2025 meeting on February 12th, Ricci Davis further admitted that when Attorney Baldwin met with Ricci the year prior, he did not provide all the details he knew at the time because, one, he had not yet heard many of the details that Keegan Kline ultimately provided to him, including that Kline was involved in the murders and that he knew Ron Logan. And two, that at the time he met with Baldwin in 2024, he could not be sure whether or not Richard Allen was one of the other 2 people Ron Logan described as also being involved in the murders. Mr. Davis stated that he was guarded during that 2024 meeting with Baldwin because he did not necessarily want to assist Richard Allen's defense team if Richard Allen was one of the 3 men that Ron Logan stated was involved in the murders. Again, on March 27, 2024, Ricci told Baldwin that he could learn the details of what he had told law enforcement by watching the videotaped interview that law enforcement should have in their possession from the time that they interviewed him in 2017. At their February 12th, 2025 meeting, Ricci was shocked to learn that Baldwin had never received the videotaped interview. Following his March 27, 2024 visit with Ricci, the very next day, Attorney Baldwin emailed both Nicholas McClelland and Stacy Diener requesting that they turn over law enforcement's videotaped interview of Ricci Davis, in which Davis presumably provided all the details of Ron Logan's confession to him on videotape. To date, prosecution has never turned over any videotaped Ricci Davis interview or explained why it hasn't been done, nor stated no such videotape exists and have ignored Baldwin's request. Well, that's because now their claim is that that video was somehow lost. Sounds like a pattern, doesn't it? The approximate 7 or 8 letters Ricci Davis claims he sent to McClelland in the months leading up to the trial would contain multiple layers of exculpatory evidence, which the defense could have used to further its investigation as to whether certain facts contained in those letters could be verified through crime scene photos, digital data, or a variety of other means. Defense counsel has never seen the Davis letters nor known of their existence until after the trial was over. Hello? When defense counsel met with Mr. Ricci Davis on February 12th, 2025, the prosecutor had not yet informed him of any existence of any such letters. On the evening of February 12th, 2025, Baldwin sent an email to McClellan and his in-house investigator, Steve Mullen, requesting that they produce both the Ricci Davis letters and the video recording in their possession of an interview Ricci Davis had with Jerry Holman in 2017. McClellan's response was completely vague, non-responsive, and didn't indicate whether he ever even received those letters or whether he sent those letters to the defense as part of discovery. In other words, McClellan didn't confirm or deny the existence of said letters. Neither did he confirm or deny that he provided the letters to defense counsel. On February 13th, Attorney Baldwin sent another email to McClellan asking straightforward questions. Did you receive multiple letters from Ricci Davis? Did you turn those letters over to the defense? These questions should be easily answered and quickly answered. If McClellan never received such letters, he should know that answer immediately, since Ricci claims that he sent the letters directly to McClellan. If McClellan did receive the letters, he should know that immediately. Furthermore, if he received the letters, he should very quickly be able to identify the dates he sent those letters to the defense and how he sent them. As of the time of this filing, McClellan has failed to answer even the most simple, straightforward question. The defense has reviewed all e-discovery from March 2024 to the present to determine whether the prosecution provided the Ricci Davis letters, to determine if those letters were hidden or buried amongst other discovery. The defense found no such letters penned by Ricci Davis addressed to McClellan. The defense has reviewed all emails during the applicable time frame to determine whether McClellan ever forwarded an email with attached letters from Ricci Davis. No such emails exist. The defense requests the court order McClellan, as well as law enforcement, to preserve any letters from Ricci Davis in their possession, and furthermore, to turn them over to the defense immediately. And guess what, guys? That did not happen. Because what did happen? Well, what happened is they made sure to delete or destroy several of the letters of Ricci Davis, including one particular letter, which is extremely concerning and most important, which was a handwritten letter by Keegan Kline himself that was included in the mailings that Ricci Davis sent Nicholas McClellan. The defense requests the court order McClellan to turn those letters over and preserve those letters, as well as any video recording of the interview of Ricci Davis in 2017. The defense is concerned that without an order from the court, the prosecution and law enforcement may lose the Ricci Davis letters. And oh my, how predictive that was, because wouldn't you know it, they did. Of course, they lost the letter, quote unquote, with Keegan Kline's handwritten confession in it. Of course they did. The defense is concerned is well-founded based on law enforcement's history in this case of losing and destroying evidence as documented before trial, including claiming that they taped over certain important videotaped interviews. Well, wouldn't you know it? Not only did they tape over or destroy the Ricci Davis video recording, but they taped over or destroyed 70 days worth of video recordings of POIs, witnesses, and family members, including the essential first week of interviews in this investigation, completely wiped from the record, lost to history, like many other things in this case. The defense had a constitutional right to know of the existence of these letters and these video recordings so that it could conduct its own investigation concerning the content, including depositions And I might add the potential consultation with experts to assist in showing the judge that there was cause to bring some of this into trial. Had the defense known of the Ricci Davis letters before trial? And let me stop there. That's a place where murder shits can absolutely get wrecked, because Murder Sheet tried to say that, oh, they knew this before trial. They had the chance to present this at trial. They should have brought this all into trial. They should have included this in the 3-day hearing. Gaslighting the public that the defense didn't have this before trial. This was only made known to the defense after trial. Had the defense known of this information, it could have factored this into its investigation, presented them to the court, and factored all of the information into the trial strategy. Had the defense received these letters prior to the motion to correct error and after the verdict, the defense furthermore could have included all of this information into the motion to correct error. Okay. We have to forward a bit through some of this. And forgive me for not going right to the page, but I'm flying on a wing and a prayer here tonight with the delay. Verified request for hearing on defendant's verified motion to preserve and produce specific evidence. Filed February 19th, 2025. On February 14th, 2025, Richard Allen filed the verified motion to preserve and produce specific evidence. The court ruled on several defense motions on February 18th, including the motion to correct error, but has not yet ruled on Allen's February 14th verified motion to preserve and produce specific evidence. Carroll County local rule states the following: the state shall disclose to the defense any material or any information within its possession or control that tends to negate the accused as to the offenses charged, or would tend to reduce the punishment of such offenses. So what does that say? That says that Carroll County local rule states that the entire state apparatus shall disclose, meaning it's mandatory to the defendant, any material or any information within its possession or state control. Okay? Meaning it's not up to the state to decide, contrary to Murder Shit's opinion. It's not up to the prosecutor to decide whether or not, because the rule is the prosecutor shall, any material or any information within the state's possession or the state's control that what tends to negate, not that totally negates, not that is completely definitively exculpatory. No. Any that tends to negate or tends to reduce the punishment of such offenses. The defense provided a verified motion detailing on why it believes the state of Indiana possesses and possessed before trial material information within its possession or control that tends to negate guilt of the accused as to the offenses charged, or would tend to reduce the punishment of such offenses. Furthermore, suppression by the prosecutor of evidence favorable to an accused upon request violates due process. You violated due process where the evidence is material either to guilt or punishment, irrespective of the good or bad faith of the prosecution. The prosecutor has not responded to the defense's requests to either confirm or deny the existence of approximately 7 or 8 letters from Ricci Davis, as well as one videotaped interview of Ricci Davis from 2017, and has further not even responded to the defense's request as to whether the prosecution claims to have produced those items to the defense. Because the prosecution failed to respond to the defense's simple request to either confirm or deny the information detailed in the previous paragraph, the defense requests a hearing for the prosecution to put on the record whether it possesses or once possessed these items, and if it claims it did possess those items, whether the prosecution provided those items to the defense. Said hearing will also assist the court or future reviewing courts, meaning the appeals court or the Supreme Court, to determine whether the state has suppressed exculpatory evidence. Okay? Due process, constitutional violation, suppression of potentially exculpatory evidence. And whether the evidence is favorable to the accused because it is either exculpatory or impeaching. The evidence was suppressed by the state either willfully, which is my claim, or inadvertently, which would be at a bare minimum. And the evidence was material to an issue at trial. Well, it absolutely was. Okay, apologize. Addendum to defendant's verified motion to preserve and produce specific evidence. Filed February 24th, 2025. In support of said motion, Allen states the following: that on February 14th, Allen filed his verified motion to preserve and produce related to certain letters and a video the defense told were sent to the prosecutor's office or in the possession of the prosecutor's office and contained potentially exculpatory evidence of which the prosecution has never provided. The person that informed the defense of the entirety of this evidence was Ricci Davis. Since the filing of that document, the defense met with a witness on February 22nd to sign an affidavit concerning his knowledge of the letters that Ricci Davis claims he sent to the prosecutor's office. Allen's attorneys attach a copy of the affidavit of James Winters to this pleading as further evidence that the defense has a good faith belief based upon due diligence that the state had in its possession certain exculpatory or potentially exculpatory evidence before the October 2024 trial that it did not turn over to the defense, and to further reinforce its request for the court in order to that the prosecution preserve and produce those letters to the defense, as well as all video related to any law enforcement interview of Ricci Davis, and set this matter for a hearing. Okay. Now, here's where it gets rich. Here's where it gets rich. This is your Nicholas McClellan response to this. Okay, so here comes the state with their typical insincere, gaslight-filled bullshit response to this extremely concerning information. McClellan claims that as the court has already outlined in its February 14th order, there is no authority for the defense to request the evidence be preserved, and would ask the court to deny the same. So first thing they're asking, McClellan says, don't order us to preserve this evidence. We don't want to preserve this evidence. We want to destroy this evidence. Can we please just burn it or record over it? Two, that the defense asked the state to produce specific evidence demonstrating potentially exculpatory evidence for the defendant. That the state has outlined in its previous filings that discovery is evidence in a case that the state intends to use at trial, or evidence that tends to exonerate the defendant, referred to as exculpatory evidence. Not all information gathered in an investigation is discovery. Yeah. But what you missed there was tends to what? We covered that earlier. Let's go to it. We're going to rub this one in. Sorry. Well, apparently I'm having difficulty finding a page. Let's get to it. Tends to negate the guilt. Tends to reduce the punishment. So you see there's a little semantics at play there. Okay. Now, number 4 is very interesting. Let's look closely at number 4. What does number 4 say? That most of what Ricci Davis told Andrew Baldwin is false. Hold on. Isn't that supposed to be proven in a hearing or proven in a court of law? How can the prosecutor include as fact, point number 4 here, including as fact that most of what Ricci Davis told Baldwin is false? Well, where's your proof for that claim? Now we get to the victim blaming, because remember, I've said before, the entire state's approach is really typical of a narcissist or narcissistic profile. Victim blaming. Okay, victim blaming. Primary strategy of most narcissistic personalities. So now we victim blame that Andy Baldwin had an opportunity to fact check the information Ricci Davis provided, but instead chose to put the information in a public motion without verifying its truthfulness. Well, okay, so what so far have we heard from Ricci Davis that wasn't true? Because if I were to go back with you, and you're welcome to rewind, right? If we would go back 30 minutes and read through what has been said so far, where's the lie? Where's the lie that Nicholas McClellan can prove? And why not attach that? Where's the proof of the lies? Number 6, the state, that means me, I, contacted the Department of Corrections and had the department send a list of all outgoing mail from Ricci Davis to the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. That, as the court can see from the list, Ricci Davis did not send the state 8 letters. He only sent 3 letters. Well, that's, again, semantic games. Ricci Davis sent 3 envelopes with 7 or 8 letters stuffed into those 3 envelopes. And then he gets you with the brick over the head in number 8. Okay, here's the brick over the head. That the state was able to recover 2 of the 3 letters sent from Ricci Davis. The letter sent on October 4th, 2025, and the letter sent on October 21st, 2025. Attached as exhibits 2 and 3. Okay, so now we're admitting, you're admitting that you received 3 envelopes. You're also admitting that you destroyed, deleted, or lost one of those envelopes, or are withholding or lying about. Number 9, here's a judgment call that he's not qualified to make. That the letters sent by Ricci Davis are not exculpatory for Richard Allen and therefore are not evidence or discovery. That the letters, in fact, accuse Richard Allen of committing the murders. It is not exculpatory evidence for Richard Allen. It is inculpatory evidence for Richard Allen. Another falsehood, because we now know that what is clearly stated by Ricci Davis is that indeed Keegan Kline admitted that he lied about Richard Allen being involved. And as stated by Andy Baldwin in the foregoing filings, Keegan Kline celebrated when Richard Allen was convicted because he felt he would no longer be on the hook for his involvement in this crime. Now, let's read number 10. That the letter dated October 4th, 2025 is titled Information on Keegan Kline and Richard Allen. The letter goes on to implicate Richard Allen in the murders, stating that he set up the meeting with the girls. He's the only one that killed, he's the one that killed the youngest girl, and once the girls were killed, Richard Allen moved the bodies. Okay, so let's stop there. Wait up. So you have a letter in your possession that you're acknowledging that claims that Richard Allen set up the meeting with the girls, which we know now is false because we know now from the state itself and state actors and investigators that the Anthony Schatz account set up the meeting with the girls. So let's revise that. The Anthony Schatz account, which is likely Keegan Kline or someone in his household, according to the state. Remember, according to your Delphi investigators, Anthony Schatz is either Keegan Kline or Tony Kline, according to the state investigators. So you have the state investigators saying that the Anthony Schatz account set up the meeting or lured the girls to the trails that day. You also have the state actors or investigators saying that the Anthony Schatz account is Keegan Kline and or his father, Tony Kline. So why are you trying to use in this filing the claim that Richard Allen set the meeting up with the girls according to Keegan Kline? Wouldn't that be something that Keegan Kline would do at the time that he's pointing the finger at someone else? If he set up the meeting with the girls or he lured the girls out there, wouldn't he say, oh, no, that guy, he set up the meeting? So what? We're supposed to believe the state, right? We're supposed to believe Jerry Holman and David Vito, right? We're supposed to believe the investigators who investigated this Delphi case, right? And the investigators say Anthony Schatz, Keegan Kline or his father, lured the girls out to the trails that day. But now we're supposed to believe Keegan Kline as opposed to Jerry Holman or David Vito. Number 11, that in the letter dated October 21st, Ricci Davis stated, no, let me go back to number 10. I left something out. I got sidetracked. Look at this. If in number 10, in the October 4th letter, Ricci Davis claims that Richard Allen is the one who killed the youngest, doesn't that mean that Richard Allen didn't kill the oldest and that someone else must have then killed the oldest? So if someone else killed the oldest and Richard Allen only killed the youngest, then that still means that there's someone else involved. Now, moving on to number 11. That in the October 21st, 2025 letter, Ricci Davis states that Keegan Kline told him that Ron Logan, Keegan Kline, and Richard Allen are responsible for the murders. Oh, so now are you admitting that we have a confession from Keegan Kline? He goes on to state that attorney Andrew Baldwin is an ignorant lawyer who was hinting me to lie for him and his client, saying I should know how it is. Number 12, although the state has diligently searched investigation for all the evidence involved in the case, the state cannot locate or even verify that the second letter sent from Ricci Davis was received by this office. And this is the shirking of responsibility or accountability. So now we're saying, hey, yeah, by the way, we can't locate, quote unquote, the second letter sent from Ricci Davis. Furthermore, we're not even going to admit that we ever received it. Number 14, that in the motion to correct error evidence Ricci Davis supplied to Andrew Baldwin, the state claims does not match the physical evidence found at the scene. Therefore, the state finds the information Ricci supplied is not credible. Yeah, you know why? You know why? Because the state had its actors tell you that both girls were killed where they were found. Okay, that's where that's coming from. So now you're going to say, well, Ricci Davis's story doesn't match because we say that the girls were killed where they were found because our cops and our crime scene techs say that the girls were killed where they were found, both of them. Well, really? So are we citing ourselves as experts now? So now we're citing ourselves. So, you know, that's funny because is that a reason to withhold potentially useful or exculpatory evidence? Because it doesn't go along with your theory of the crime because you're the prosecution and you want a conviction in this case. And since you want to believe that both girls were killed where they were found, you are going to then ignore any other information that comes forward that's potentially exculpatory or useful and not forward it to the defense, and therefore deem the person relaying this information to be not credible. 15, that there is zero evidence found in this investigation that Ron Logan and Keegan Kline knew each other or shared or exchanged child pornography. Well, hold on. In this investigation, what do you mean? The investigation which also did not indicate that Richard Allen shared or exchanged child pornography? Because it seems like you had a bunch of state actors out here trying to push this this notion that Richard Allen knew Tony Kline and that Richard Allen was participating in the sharing of CSAM with Tony and Keegan Kline. I sure did see a lot of state actors out here pushing that. Are we now going to say that, oh, well, there was no child pornography investigation whatsoever involved in the Delphi murders investigation when we know that not to be true? What was the purpose of the meeting at Grissom if there was no potential that Keegan Kline was involved in these murders or in the sharing of pornography related to these victims? Did you not interview Ron Logan's exes to gain from them the information that they allege that Ron Logan was viewing and sharing child pornography? That the state was able to obtain recent communications between Keegan Kline and various civilians, where Keegan Kline denies the allegations set forth by Ricci Davis. So now we're believing Keegan Kline. Okay. So now we're believing Keegan Kline. We're believing a potential POI, a person who has confessed to these crimes. We're going to believe that person over Ricci Davis because he denies the allegations to various civilians. Oh, who are those various civilians? Oh, let's see. Murder Shits, Rick Snay, and Tom, what's his name? I don't know what his name is. The weirdo, the weird guy. So you got all of these weirdos communicating regularly, tipping Keegan Kline off to what's going on out here in the outside world. You know, you got all these, the Tom Websters, the Murder Shits, the Rick Snays, the Holly Lowrys. You got all these people tipping Keegan Kline off to what's being discussed out here in the world, telling him to shut up, telling him don't talk about this shit, informing him of the things that are being said, keeping him up to speed on what he needs to know to not talk about. Various civilians. Yeah, I'm sorry. A bunch of podcasters, YouTubers, and bloodlusters protecting Keegan Kline are not various civilians. That further, Keegan Kline states that Ricci Davis is an idiot. I've only talked to him maybe 2 times. He's one of those guys in prison that tries to write all different prosecutors and get time cuts on people's cases. It's laughable. Keegan reiterates this point in several of the responses to these YouTubers and podcasters. Yeah, so again, we are taking the word of Keegan Kline that Ricci Davis is an idiot, that Ricci Davis has only been talked to maybe 2 times, that Ricci Davis wants to get his time cut for stepping forward when Ricci Davis has explicitly stated he doesn't want anything. But suddenly, Keegan Kline is extremely credible. Okay. 18, that as the court can see from State's Exhibit 1, Ricci Davis did send several other letters out to attorneys, which adds credence to the statements Keegan Kline made about Ricci Davis's behavior. Again, so now we're saying Keegan Kline is very credible. 19, that Attorney Baldwin could have requested this information from the DOC to verify or debunk Ricci Davis's statements before he made his filing, but chose to file the motion without verifying the allegations. No, because he knew from Ricci the exact story, that there were 7 or 8 letters sent and that you claim not to have received any at the time. That attorney Baldwin, by his own admission, interviewed Ricci Davis on March 27, 2024. Right. But remember the nature of that conversation. During that conversation, Ricci Davis was being misled, okay, had been misled by Keegan Kline to believe Richard Allen may have been involved in this crime. So therefore, in March of 2024, when Baldwin spoke to Ricci, Ricci clearly will tell you now that he didn't say shit to Andrew Baldwin, because he was suspecting that Keegan Kline might have told him the actual name of the person who was the third person involved, which was Richard Allen. It was only after Ricci Davis learned that Keegan Kline lied to him that Ricci Davis decided to trust Andrew Baldwin. So that whole argument there is totally flaccid or shallow. It makes no sense. That attorney Andrew Baldwin had every opportunity before trial to depose Ricci Davis and every opportunity to call him as a witness at any hearing or trial. In fact, James Winter's statements to this office, Andrew Baldwin had in fact subpoenaed Ricci Davis to testify at trial for Richard Allen. Right. And your judge denied any mention of the very individuals Ricci Davis would have been testifying to. So therefore, how was Andrew Baldwin how in the world was Andrew Baldwin supposed to use Ricci Davis as a witness to witness against Ron Logan and Keegan Kline when Andrew Baldwin was absolutely forbidden to mention the names of Keegan Kline and Ron Logan? '22, that Andrew Baldwin now wants to present these statements from Ricci Davis as irrefutable proof without any evidence or corroboration to back up the statements. No, he doesn't. That's not what this is. That filing was not about irrefutable proof. Do you see the gaslighting there? Were those filings that we just read about irrefutable proof, or were those filings saying, "Hey, buddy, you got some shit that you were obligated to turn over to us because it's potentially exculpatory or of use, and you neglected to turn over this extremely concerning information, so we need you to turn this shit over"? Is that attorney Baldwin declaring that anything Ricci Davis was saying at the time to be irrefutable proof, or is that attorney Baldwin saying, "Give me the shit that Ricci Davis gave you and send me the recording of Ricci Davis telling you in March of or April of 2017 all the things Ron Logan was saying to him"? That Ricci Davis's statements to Andrew Baldwin do not match the statements he made in the letters he sent the state. Right. Because more information became available. He learned more after those letters were written. In those letters, he does not say Richard Allen is innocent or not involved. Quite the opposite. He says Richard Allen participated in the murders, yes, with one other or two others, and is guilty. That's what he was being told by Keegan Kline at the time. That the evidence contains allegations that the defendant is guilty with no proof of those allegations is not exculpatory evidence and therefore does not need to be turned over to the defense. That there's not a video interview of Ricci Davis that exists within discovery or is within the state's possession. So number 25 here is the admission of the destruction of the video recording of the 2017 interview of Ricci Davis with Jerry Holman. So in number 25 here, where is it? Here, they're admitting that the recording of Ricci Davis being interviewed by Jerry Holman and relaying all of the confessions of Ron Logan has been destroyed by the state because for some reason it's no longer in the state's possession. That even if this was evidence the defense wished to use at trial, it was not newly discovered evidence. The defense knew of Ricci Davis, had interviewed him, had subpoenaed him, and chose not to present the evidence because you were withholding the evidence. How is a defense supposed to use the evidence at trial when the defense did not have the evidence because you were withholding it? As the state has mentioned in previous responses, any information pertaining to Ron Logan or Keegan Klein falls under the state's motion in limine concerning third-party motive. So that's the admission that this shit couldn't have been used. So he just debunked himself from the prior paragraph. The defense had 3 days to present evidence to meet their burden for third-party motive. They mentioned Ron Logan, but failed to meet their burden with the court because they didn't have the information. They chose not to present this evidence in that hearing because this evidence didn't exist. They also did not present this evidence when they renewed their motion during trial because they didn't have this evidence. You see how circular this is? Then we have a straight up allegation. Okay, this is the narcissist coming out. This now seems to be an effort by the defense to use this motion to circumvent their burden concerning third-party motive. So begging you for evidence that they've just learned of that is exculpatory is now circumventing the burden concerning third-party motive. I mean, that's a far reach. None of the evidence the state has gathered from Ricci Davis is exculpatory, nor is it discovery. Well, I would beg to differ. I would say that video recorded interview of Ricci and Holman, in which Ricci is relaying the statements of Ron Logan saying that he killed the girls on his property with 2 others, and it was a good time. I think that would be exculpatory. And I think that should have been discovery. But obviously, just like the other shit, you deleted it. You deleted the video. You let Ron Logan out because he was talking. You kicked the FBI off the case, who considered Ron Logan a primary suspect and had gathered evidence. And you buried the case against Keegan Klein and made him pay his price by giving him a hefty sentence for his crimes in a separate case. Then another baseless accusation. This motion seems yet another attempt by attorney Andrew Baldwin to push a certain narrative to the public, specifically the online world. Remember how they're so butthurt about people on the internet? You know how the state is so sensitive. The prosecutor and the ISP superintendent at the time, oh my God, they were so butthurt about the internet, people on the internet questioning them, criticizing them, extremely concerned with the online world. He seems to file these types of motions with very bold allegation that neither verifies the information nor does he present any evidence to back up the statements. How can he present evidence when he's asking you for evidence? Like I said, think about how insane this is. So all Baldwin did was ask for the evidence in your possession. You have now twisted that into saying that he does not present any evidence. He was not attempting to present evidence. The attempt here was to have the judge compel you or force you to give up the evidence that you had. Insane that you would try to say that he's not presenting evidence. That it is unfortunate that motions by the defense have come to the point where they present statements from an inmate. Well, what's the problem with the statement from an inmate? Are you saying that there's never been an inmate that has told a true statement that's been of use in a criminal trial? So we've never had an inmate contribute positively to a prosecution. We've never had an inmate tell the truth in an ongoing criminal case. Now, let me point something out to you here. This is pretty interesting. Okay, what you're going to see here is going to be very interesting. Dear Chief Prosecutor, my name is Ricci Davis. I am incarcerated at the Newcastle Correctional Facility. I wasn't comfortable writing for fear of not being taken seriously. However, this has to be heard. There are several aspects that at first may seem all over the place. However, if I don't explain it all, you'll get confused, so forgive me. I'll do my best here. Back some years ago, a man named Ron Logan came here to Newcastle, and I daily commiserated with him. And a lot of things he opened up about made my ex-girlfriend contact the FBI, trying to do the right thing, say the least. Fast forward to today. There's also been another guy who was transferred here from another prison back in early March by the name of Keegan Klein. For the last 6 months, he seemed to need a friend and quickly, recklessly began to talk of beating the system. And that he was glad it's Richard Allen who's caught up. However, he feared he would run his mouth. Note, I'm in a protective custody unit with 98% child molesters. And trust me, the people speak and brag on their cases as if it's a cool thing. I'm here on drug charges. However, Keegan Klein assumed I must have had a sex case and began talking, and I slowly took the information as it appeared, or as he appeared, to build trust in me. Oddly, since an earlier report by my ex-girlfriend was made regarding Mr. Logan, out of nowhere, this lawyer pops up to visit me, Baldwin or something. wanting to know if I would come testify on Richard Allen's behalf regarding Logan. I told him no because I already planned on contacting you, knowing the information to do with Klein. I never told him about Klein. I never told him about Klein. Okay, so first thing, what's revealed here? In March 2024, when Baldwin goes to meet Ricci, Ricci doesn't say a damn thing about Klein. Only Logan. I never told him about Klein because the information involved Allen, Keegan Klein, and Ron Logan, although he has now passed on, as you know. I will now explain what Klein has told me, and I'll share the evidence he informed me of so you can see I'm doing this in good faith. Keegan told me him and his dad. Remember, this is the letter to Nick McClellan, okay? Keegan told me him and his dad were working a hustle from this back page, which might mean back page, making big money from child images. What is child images? Child porn. Keegan told me him and his dad were working a hustle from back page, making big money on child porn, is your translation. Every 6 months, they bought burner phones for clients. And Richard Allen and Logan were two of them and received new phones from Keegan. From what I was told, they done a lot of trading too. I am told they all had their hands in this murder and feel relieved someone has the fall guy who isn't going to talk. Oh, what does that sentence mean? Listen to that sentence. I'm told they all had their hands in this, and Keegan feels relieved someone has the fall guy who isn't going to talk. Interesting. So, even in this letter, Richard Allen is being referred to as a fall guy. Okay. Now, listen to this one. This Allen guy sold a firearm to Keegan for these burner phones he supplied. Okay, let's consider that critically. What if, as we know now, Keegan admits he was putting Allen in those shoes because he was arrested on TV? Let's scratch out Allen and leave that name blank and consider this critically. This guy sold a firearm to Keegan for these burner phones he supplied him. Didn't Keegan have a .40 caliber handgun? What other guns may have Keegan had? How did Keegan attain his firearms? Are there records at the FFLs for Keegan obtaining these firearms? Who is the guy who allegedly traded a firearm to Keegan for the burner phones? Could Ron Logan have traded a gun Ron Logan, who had an extensive collection of firearms. Maybe Ron Logan? Maybe the other mysterious third person in this scenario? Who could have traded Keegan Kline a firearm for some kiddie porn on burner phones? Keegan somehow had the Abbey girl victim take pictures of herself and traded them between the three. Oh, hold on. Let's take the names out of there. Keegan somehow had the girl victim take pictures of herself and traded them between the three, which matches what Ricci now says, that Keegan was mocking Libby's weight and upset that he could not sell the images of Libby in Las Vegas because she was too fat. Alan set up the meeting the girls with Logan. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we now know that to be false, because what we now know is that Unified Command itself says that the Anthony Shots account set up the meeting with the girls. The Anthony Shots account set up meeting the girls with Logan. However, they met at Logan's home drinking. They met at Logan's home drinking. Who is they? The girls? The guys? And Keegan met up with the girls as Alan, or Scratch Blank, was at the farm. Keegan had the firearm and Logan had a carpet knife to scare the girls. Oh, now Keegan Kline had the firearm? Look, there it is. Keegan Kline had the firearm and Logan had a carpet knife to scare the girls. They walked the girls, I guess that's back to the house where the unidentified male waited. I was aware about the story being a lot of details. However, I pretended interested over time. Oh, I was unsure about the story being a lot of details. However, I pretended interested over time. Here are some details only the killers would know, and make yourself so that you can weigh the information out. Okay? He informed me, in other words, Keegan informed me, him and Alan, or unidentified male, moved the bodies 3 times, and they were not killed where they were found. He said they staged the scene, whatever that means. Keegan said they staged the scene. Keegan said they staged the scene. The youngest girl was kept alive longer. The youngest girl was kept alive longer. And Alan, or unidentified male, didn't want to kill her. But Keegan made him because it was too late. He said they got all nervous leaving town in their own cars out to Lafayette to get rid of evidence. I honestly don't see him making all of this up. However, if it appears he did for some sick reason, just dismiss this letter. If by chance it seems to meet the evidence you are dealing with, you are welcome to come speak with me. To be honest, I'm only comfortable speaking with you for the moment. Please understand, as the snitch label is real in prison. However, I will talk to you for the time being. P.S. I also saved a note from Keegan he wrote on lockdown that don't say a lot, but he talks a little in it. Well, if you want, I'll preserve it. If you want, in case, let me know. Something like that. Okay. Okay, here's another one. This is October 28th, 2024. Received, Carroll County Prosecutor. All right, how's everybody doing before I get into this one? Because I know we're getting a little long here. This is getting long, but it's very important we go through this with a fine-tooth comb into fine detail. All right. All right, let's continue into this one. Are you guys proud of me for being able to read Ricci's handwriting? You know, kids can't do this anymore. Most of the youth in America cannot read cursive anymore. It's a damn shame. Dear Mr. McClellan, if you will look back on record, the same information now being released, the evidence I've done reported. I reported that the girls were cut up, or as Jerry Holman says, got a knife stuck in them. I reported the girls were cut and their throats cut back in 2018. No, I think it was 2017, Reese. Remember, that meeting was only months after the murders. I reported the girls were moved and hidden in a barn. Can you say, Shaq? Oh my God. I reported in 2017 the girls' throats were cut. The girls were moved. The girls were hidden in a barn. Shack attack. Shack attack. Oh, Josh Link. The girls were found in a cabin. The girls were found in a cabin. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me get the shack attack for you guys. I haven't done this in a while. This is the old shit. And I know you guys like the old shit. You're all OGs, right? OGs. Let's see. Oops. There I go, goofing around again. Let's see. You OGs, you want to see this, trust me. And if you aren't an OG, trust me, you want to see this as well. I got some stuff for you. Let's pull out a put out a little doozy for you guys. The old shit. I don't know. I got several of them. Maybe this one will work. Let's try this one. All right. You see, like I told you, every time we come and we're covering the most important information, what happens? The bloodluster, guilter demon, meth head, pedophile protecting, chomo loving trolls come in. So, all right. Oh, what do we have here? Josh Lank. Both girls found dead in a cabin around 12:30 today. So are you telling me the day the bodies were found, February 14th, 2017, February 14th, 2017, the day the bodies were found, within 2 hours, a relative was announcing that they were both found dead in a cabin? Ricci Davis says the girls were hidden in a barn. Hidden in a barn. I think I got something else I could show you real quickly. That would be fun for the newcomers. Girls were hidden in a barn. And now that Ricci tells the story to all of us, we look around and we're like, hey, what is this? We look around and we're like, oh, what is this right here? Let's see. Looks like Ron Logan's barn. Barn, cabin, shack, the shack. They were driven around until the search started. I reported that Mr. Logan left town, leaving the girls with 2 others until he got back because Logan got nervous. Recently, I learned the last 5 months who else was involved. You have one now and Keegan Kline. If I had 5 minutes to explain, you would see all 3 were involved. I offered the detective who came to see me in 2018, 2017, to put a wire on and let them conclude for themselves what all Logan was saying. Remember, Ricci says he offered to wear a wire so that they could document on the recording Logan saying some of this stuff in his own voice. Of course, Jerry Holman declined. McClelland, they declined that offer, which made no sense when it was a perfect opportunity, as it is a perfect investigation tool for 2 reasons. First, it would provide the information from the source directly, and to eliminate misinformation as to the reality of trusting an inmate's credibility. So even Ricci is self-aware enough to have known that you don't want to trust an inmate, right? He says you don't want to trust an inmate's credibility. How about just they should award the wire, get the information straight from the source, and it would eliminate any confusion or any misinformation because you wouldn't have to rely on trusting me. Of course, Jerry Holman says, no, we don't want the wire. No thanks. I get it. The problem was the detective, Jerry Holman, and examiner, Paul Hansard, came with the mindset of not willing to believe me. Before I ever even spoke, I have a disability of Tourette's syndrome, as it provokes my nervous system. I take several medications for treatment, and they gave me no chance to explain these facts. That's the reason I just simply offered to put a wire on and allow it to be recorded. Fast forward. I was visited by attorney Angie Baldwin, who is representing Richard Allen. I didn't know. However, he stated his investigation, he was investigating past reports, and my name came up. Okay, key takeaway there. This brings us to another revelation here. So now we see that Andrew Baldwin was investigating past reports. Now we know he came across one of the Ricci Davis FBI reports, or one of the Kathy Shank, Steve Mullen, no, cleared, covered, right? In any case, Baldwin came across one of the reports in Discovery mentioning Ricci Davis. Then he sought out Ricci Davis, according to Ricci. He was investigating past reports, and my name came up. He informed me the information was what I gave in 2017. And it lined up with the actual evidence at the murder scene. He asked me if I would come testify at trial. I told him no. And the reason was, knowing his client, Keegan Kline and Ron Logan, are all involved. Long story short, I wasn't going to help because I was planning on reporting the information to your office. Mr. McClellan, this ignorant lawyer was hinting me to lie for him and his client, saying that I should know how it is. Please hear me out. I can never relate to child killers. I don't know what planet this attorney is on. It felt insulting in a way. He indicated this occult issue. He is far from right, because Kline told me himself they staged the scene. They staged the scene. This is the second time he said this, because Ron knew they were coming after him, because by the time they were killed, the police were everywhere and through the night, and there was no way to get the girls out of the area. Ron Logan, knew they were coming after him, because by the time the girls were killed, the police were everywhere and through the night, and there was no way of getting the girls out of the area. Does that mean that those girls were not killed at 3 p.m., 2:30, 3:30? Because was that place crawling with cops at 2:30, 3:30, 4:30? When was that place crawling with cops? Because by the time they were killed, the police were everywhere. That had to be around nightfall or later, right? It had to be during the night. Police weren't everywhere at 3:30. The police weren't everywhere at 4. The police weren't everywhere at 5. By the time they were killed, the police were everywhere, and there was no way of getting the girls out of the area. I hope we can speak because although Logan has passed away, the other two need to face the consequences. I've been afraid that I'm not taken seriously and Keegan will somehow get off and not see his day in court. Well, that turned out to be oddly prophetic. I wholeheartedly, you'll allow me to explain everything so you can compare the information to validate. I don't expect to be believed. However, you compare the information. Now, guys, I just realized this week. I have a bombshell for you. And the bombshell is, hold on. Let me get my annoying sound effect. The bombshell is the last paragraph here. I think we have a no shit here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me read this last paragraph for you so you can read along with me. I'm going to leave it big on the screen here. Listen to this. Thank you. And as I promised, I would send the note Keegan wrote. And I'll send it with this. Hold on. What letter is this? This is the letter that's marked October 28th, 2024. States Exhibit number 3. Last paragraph, page 4. Thank you, as I promised, I would send the note Keegan wrote, and I'll send it with this. And all this time, we've been believing that the third envelope, which McClellan doesn't acknowledge, contained the note Keegan wrote. This appears to indicate that the note Keegan wrote was included in this envelope because he says right before signing it and mailing it, as I promised, I'll send it with this. How is it no one's caught this before? How is it McClellan didn't realize this? What is he going to say now? Oh, no, it wasn't in this one. It wasn't in this one. Had to be in that third one that we can't find. But odd that okay, so we got several envelopes with several letters stuffed in each. Why do we only see 2 letters here? Put that in your notebooks, okay? Put it in your notebooks. Even I didn't catch this a year ago. No one else caught it a year ago. I don't think McClellan caught it when he sent this off as an exhibit or attachment. But again, States Exhibit 3, October 28, 2024, received. Thank you. And as I promised, I would send the note Keegan wrote. I'll send it with this. You can see it stamped here or postmarked October 21st, 2024. All right. Oh, now it's going to get spicy. Going to get spicy here. I'm sure some people will hate me after this. What do we have here? The third one here is murder sheet. The murder shits, the shits. This is murder sheet. We wanted to reach out to you to see if you had heard about the most recent filing in the Richard Allen case. One of Allen's trial attorneys claims that he spoke with Ricci Davis and that Ricci Davis talked to him about you. According to Davis, you made comments to him indicating that you were involved in the murders, that Ron Logan was too, and that you had info only the killers would know. Do you have any comments on this for our podcast? All right. Next up, I believe this is Tom Webster. Hi, Keegan. I'm not sure if you are talking to anyone who keeps you updated about when you are being mentioned in legal filings, but on February 14th, Richard Allen's defense attorney, Andrew Baldwin, filed a motion that referenced you being involved in the Delphi murders. February 12th, 2025, Baldwin met with Ricci Davis, inmate who previously talked about Ron Logan confessing to him. Davis and Baldwin, he met both Keegan Kline and Ron Logan at Newcastle. Logan confessed to being involved in the Delphi murders with two other people, but never said who they were, although he revealed details only the killer would know. March 2024, Keegan Kline was placed near Davis, and Keegan Kline stated if Logan mentioned Keegan Kline's name, and Davis began to realize Keegan Kline may have been one of the other two killers. Keegan Kline received details of the murders that corroborated. Keegan Kline revealed details of the murders that corroborated details Logan had told Davis that only the killers would know. These conversations continued until Richard Allen was found guilty in November 2025. And Keegan told Davis he was relieved he would no longer be a suspect. Keegan told Davis that Richard Allen was not the third killer. Oh, do we have Tom Webster admitting? Keegan told Davis that Richard Allen was not the third killer, and Allen was not involved in the murders of Abby and Libby. Keegan told Davis he knew Ron Logan from using CSAM and sharing burner phones, and would meet every 3 to 6 months to show Logan how to use the phones. That's it. Baldwin filed a motion because he said Allen's defense never received 8 letters Ricci Davis said he sent to McClellan, or a videotaped police interview of Davis, and that the defense could have used that information to show how Ron Logan and you were involved in the murders and Richard Allen is innocent. Is this stuff true? How would you describe Ricci Davis? Is he unreliable, making stuff up? Apparently, he took a polygraph about what he said Ron Logan confessed to and failed miserably. Some of the details were included in a court filing and did not match up to the case crime scene facts. Thanks. So you guys see how they're informing Keegan Kline on what's happening? They're keeping him up to the minute, up to date on what's happening. Look at the dates here. This is the date of and the day after the filing. So these scumbags, these pieces of shit who are communicating with Keegan Kline, the day of and the day after are informing him in great detail as to what Ricci Davis is saying as relayed by Baldwin in these filings. Oh, what do we have here? Rick Snay. Hey, February 16th, 2 days after. Just a heads up, Holly is back at it, and she plans on contacting you to get details. You're a grown man. Just know anything you say to her will be shared online. Why are these people immediately informing Keegan Kline on what's being said in this filing? Why are they feeding him the talking points that Ricci Davis is not credible? The shit don't match up to the crime scene. And by the way, keep your mouth shut because anything you say is going to be repeated online. Just forwarding to the next document. Okay. Richard Allen's verified reply memorandum. Okay. Richard Allen's verified reply memorandum to State of Indiana's response to preserve and produce and request for sanctions. The prosecution's response brief provided proof that the state of Indiana failed to turn over exculpatory evidence to the defense. In his response, the prosecutor glosses over the fact that he was in possession of letters that he failed to turn over to the defense before trial, even though in a February 13th, 2025 email, he denied possessing such letters. McClellan also has no explanation as to why a letter from Davis from October 15th, 2024 is missing and cannot be found. Remember, that's the missing letter. Okay? The extremely concerning missing letter. Instead, the prosecution spends the majority of his response denigrating defense counsel. Prosecutor McClellan is not the arbiter of exculpatory evidence or whether he has an obligation to turn it over. The law is the arbiter. Exculpatory evidence is defined as evidence tending to establish a criminal defendant's innocence. Carroll County local rule also requires McClellan to turn over exculpatory evidence. Based upon his February 28th, 2025 filing, we know that the state of Indiana had certain letters in its possession in October of 2024, but failed to turn those letters over to the defense until February 28th, 2025. The prosecution only produced those letters after the defense sought those letters, being forced to file a motion to produce those letters after the prosecution failed to admit being in possession of those letters. The behavior of the state is consistent with a pattern of behavior. That's right. Lies, omissions, lies, omissions, lies, omissions, and gaslights. This pattern of behavior has greatly impacted the defense and Richard Allen's constitutional rights throughout the entirety of this case, as will be recounted later in this memorandum. A pattern of withholding exculpatory evidence, a pattern of withholding of exculpatory evidence may lead to a reversal and a new trial. In Pruitt, the Court of Appeals reversed the conviction when soon after the conviction, the defense counsel learned of evidence that the prosecutor failed to turn over to the defense prior to trial. Defense theory. At Allen's trial, the defense indicated that evidence supported that on February 13th, 2017, the victims were abducted. I feel like I got to make myself bigger because I have to emphasize and act the fool here. The defense's theory is that the girls were abducted, taken somewhere else, perhaps in a vehicle. Okay, so girls are abducted. Girls are taken somewhere else, perhaps in a vehicle, and then during the early morning hours of February 14th, after the search parties left the area, where we know that's about 2 a.m., were ultimately transported back to the location where they were found on February 14th, 2017. Now, let me just stop here. You guys think about that all. Think about Stacey Eldridge. Think about the geofencing, okay? Think about the fact that Stacey Eldridge says that a headphone jack is activated immediately as a call comes in at about 5:44, and we know at p.m. on the 13th, and we know that minutes later a phone leaves the geofencing area near the crime scene. We also know that Stacey Eldridge discovered that at 10:32 p.m., the headphone jack is activated again when something is removed from the headphone jack. We also know that for some bizarre reason, and there are conflicting time frames here, either at midnight or 2 a.m., somewhere in that zone, the search is allegedly called off. We also know that shortly after 2 a.m., blood-curdling screams are heard by 3 women, one of whom was murdered shortly afterwards. We also know that at 4:33 a.m., the phone inexplicably comes back on momentarily, reconnects with the cell tower, receives all of these hits from the tower or info with the tower, and then powers off. We also know at that exact moment, a newscast goes live with a bunch of searchers and family members in the area in view of the camera behind the reporter, indicating that a large group of people were definitely there prior to 4:32 a.m. We know that none of this aligns with what law enforcement said as to when the search resumed in the morning. We also know that David Erskine came forward and claimed that those bodies were found hours prior to 12:15 p.m. And as I showed you previously, we also know that 2 hours after the girls were allegedly found, Josh Lank announces they had both been found dead in a cabin. Further, the defense's theory was that evidence strongly supported that multiple people were involved in the abduction and the murder of the victims. The defense theories were detailed in the defense's opening statement and throughout the trial, or in offers to prove from August 1st, 2024. Remember, I told you about the 3-day hearing that you all need to go back and get extremely familiar with? State's theory. The state's theory was that in some order, the following events occurred: the killer acting alone, after running or walking or briskly walking across a bridge to catch up to the girls, was seen on video casually walking, not panting like a 45-year-old man who had run across the bridge. Then abducted 2 victims, walked, slid down a steep hill with those victims. Then in a panic, after observing a van, which actually wasn't there until 15 minutes later, corralled these victims across an active creek while holding a gun. And then both victims were somehow undressed. But the younger victim was later redressed in the pants, bra, and sweatshirt of the older victim. And the lone panicked killer murdered one victim and then murdered the other victim without anyone hearing any screams, in spite of sound traveling very well through that area all the way to the bridge. And then let me add, and in spite of the fact that there were many individuals out there at that time. Then the lone panicked killer moved the older victim from one area to another next to a tree without any drag marks, indicating that he carried her from one place to another, 200 pounds. All that activity, according to the state's theory, occurred in a 19-minute time frame between 2:13 and 2:32 p.m. when the older victim's phone stopped moving, having been placed under a shoe under the younger victim's body. Why would you place a phone under a shoe? Why would anyone place that phone under a shoe and under the victim's body unless there were 2 purposes? Well, I would say 3. 1, that the phone be found. 2, that the phone be protected from the elements, which is why it's under the shoe. And 3, that whatever is on the phone be found with the phone that's protected and stashed under one of the victim's bodies. After the murders, the state's theory was that this panicked killer then took time to place sticks on top of the victims' bodies in particular patterns as depicted in the photos admitted at trial. And then, in spite of this panic, hung around the crime scene for over an hour. Over an hour. Before exiting the crime scene like an idiot, choosing to walk westbound on an active road toward his vehicle on 300 North in a bloody outfit, knowing that he would be in full view of any vehicles and neighbors. Traveling that road after having killed the victims an hour and a half earlier. The state's theory was not that multiple men or women were involved in the crimes, but that one man alone committed all these acts and did so on the afternoon of February 13th, 2017. Ricci Davis's letters provide exculpatory information that supports the defense theory and negates the state's theory, and also provides other information that defense could have utilized for trial or to support its request for third-party suspect evidence to be admitted into trial or into evidence. In Davis's letters that the state did not turn over, Ricci Davis stated that Keegan Klein, a key suspect in the case, confessed to the murders. A key suspect confessing to the murders is exculpatory evidence, as it tends to establish a criminal defendant's innocence. At a minimum, Carroll County local rule required McClellan to immediately turn those letters over to the defense, even if he believed that the letters did not need to be turned over because of Davis's claim that Richard Allen was involved in the crimes alongside Klein and Logan. When police or prosecutors conceal significant exculpatory or impeaching material in the state's possession, it's ordinarily incumbent on the state to set the record straight. So the question is not whether the defendant would more than likely not have received a different verdict with the evidence, but rather in its absence that he received a fair trial, understood as a verdict worthy of confidence. Due process. The jury in the Richard Allen case was out for nearly 4 days, a very lengthy deliberation period. In this case, Keegan Klein's confession to the murders and also Klein's claim that Ron Logan was involved are clearly exculpatory statements. These were the two most likely suspects during the investigation. They were legitimate law enforcement suspects. They were investigated by law enforcement. They were interviewed by law enforcement. They were suspected by law enforcement. If it could be shown that Klein and Logan knew each other, that would be significant for a significant fact for the court to consider when determining matters of third-party suspect defense, and also for a jury to consider. The fact that Klein also implicated Allen would not have been of concern to the defense, as the defense knows that Allen had no linkage to either Klein or Logan. And let's stop it there, because you know another thing the bloodluster, guilt, or demons do? They try to insinuate and imply that Klein knew Allen and Allen knew Klein. They will say things like, oh, well, we spoke to a lot of residents of Peru. We spoke to a lot of community members. And these community members believe that Allen knew Klein or Allen knew his father. They'll come out and they'll insinuate over and over again that Allen knew Klein. Allen knew Klein. Allen knew the Kleins. Community members believe so. Community members told us so. Okay, where's the proof? None. And when you ask Unified Command and the Delphi investigators, they are on the record saying that they heard the same, but they could not establish with proof or evidence that at all whatsoever. No matter how hard they tried to connect Allen to the Kleins, they could not do so. And that's coming from your Delphi investigators out of their own mouths themselves. The defense knows that Allen had no linkage to either Klein or Logan, and also because the evidence supports that Allen was with his wife the night of February 13th and morning of February 14th, when Klein is claiming Allen was with Logan and Klein committing the crimes. Had the defense known of the information contained in the Ricci Davis letters, it would have renewed its motion for third-party suspect defense regarding Klein and Logan and would have further investigated these claims. Perhaps the defense would have sought a continuance to investigate the ties between Logan and Klein. And we know there are ties there. The defense could have argued that Keegan Klein knew details of the crime that no one else knew, and furthermore, that he was protecting an unknown third party by claiming Allen was the third party after Allen's arrest. The defense could do none of that, as well as any other number of legal, strategic, procedural maneuvering if it was in the dark about the contents in the letters while the prosecution was fully aware of that information. The details that Klein provided to Davis add to the exculpatory value of these letters. On page 4 of one of those letters, Davis claims that Klein detailed that the girls' bodies were moved 3 times and that they were not killed where they were found, and furthermore, that their bodies were staged. These are facts consistent with the defense theory and facts that oppose the state's theory. Yeah, it's why the state actors are so dead set on deconstructing those particular facts. Furthermore, in the letter, Davis claims that Keegan Klein detailed how the killers got nervous and left town in their own cars, with at least one of them going to Lafayette to get rid of evidence. It is known that Ron Logan went to Lafayette at some point in time to purchase exotic fish after having asked a relative to assist him in creating an alibi. These are all facts that Ricci Davis would not know, but that the killer would know. All of those facts tend to establish Richard Allen's innocence. In the second letter, Davis claims that back in 2018, he reported that the victims' throats were sliced. Well, actually, now we know that to be 2017. That is something that only the killer would know, especially when the details of the murders were not known at that time. He also stated that he reported the girls were hidden in a barn. And also driven around at some point in time. This is consistent with the defense theory that the girls were driven in a car at some point. This is consistent that the defense theory that the girls were driven around in a car at some point. Were the girls driven around in a car at some point and held somewhere until the search parties left the area at 2 a.m., midnight? On page 3 of that letter, Ricci recorded that Keegan Klein told him that the scene was staged. Keegan Klein told Ricci that the scene was staged, and furthermore mentioned that the girls could not be moved because the search parties were everywhere throughout the night at the time, meaning the girls were moved to the place they were found only after the search party left the area. This is just as the defense claimed, thereby supporting the defense theory and negating the state's theory. In his February 12th, 2025 interview at Newcastle, Ricci Davis provided further details that he believes that he also provided to the prosecution concerning the details that Klein stated to Davis. In that interview, for example, Ricci Davis claimed that Keegan Klein stated the girls were handcuffed to each other. Oh my God. Keegan Klein stated the girls were handcuffed to each other. After meeting, now remember, this is February 12th, 2025. Okay? Long after trial is over. Keegan Klein stated the girls were handcuffed to each other. After the meeting, defense counsel Ajay Baldwin and investigator Matt Hoffman viewed the crime scene photos and autopsy photos to determine whether there were any indicators on the victims' wrists that would support this new information that the victims were handcuffed to one another. The admittedly non-expert eyeballs of the attorneys and investigator observed straight lines or striations on the left wrists of each girl, which, if true, could indicate that one victim walked immediately behind the other, with each of their left hands handcuffed to each other so that they could not easily run away. And remember, Ricci Davis also said that Keegan Klein said that one of the girls slipped the handcuff and got away, Abby, because her wrists were so small. If the defense had received these letters, it could have learned these facts from Davis during a deposition before trial, and then had experts view the crime scene and autopsy photos before trial to determine whether the photos were indicative of the girls being handcuffed before trial. But of course, they only learned of this on February 12th of 2025. Had the defense known of the Keegan-Klein statements to Ricci Davis, it could have brought both Keegan-Klein and Ricci Davis in for depositions after hours or during the weekend, even while the trial was occurring. These depositions could have revealed additional information, including whether at some point in time, Keegan-Klein finally admitted that Richard Allen had nothing to do with the crimes, as Ricci Davis stated to counsel during the jail interview on February 12th, 2025. Again, Ricci Davis in this February 12th, 2025 interview stated to Baldwin that Keegan-Klein admitted that Richard Allen had nothing to do with the crimes, but the trial was over. These depositions would have revealed whether or not Keegan-Klein's claim about the activities of the third anonymous unnamed person with him and Logan was inconsistent with Richard Allen's whereabouts the night of February 13 and morning of February 14. The defense likely would have called up Kathy Allen to show that Richard Allen was at home during that time frame, the night of February 13th and early morning of February 14th, and not with Keegan-Klein or Ron Logan. Additionally, the defense could have asked the Department of Corrections to provide video from the very pod where Ricci Davis and Keegan-Klein were housed to determine whether Klein and Davis were frequently talking with one another, as Klein has apparently stated in State's Exhibit 4 to some podcaster that he only talked to Davis maybe 2 times. If the video shows that Davis and Klein talked to each other well beyond 2 times, that could be determined that Klein was lying. Whereas if the video shows that Davis only talked to Klein 2 times, then it would show that Davis was lying. Either way, the defense had a right to those letters to conduct its own thorough investigation concerning the veracity of the content of those letters. McClelland's claim that he did not turn over the Ricci Davis letters because he made his own determination that the letters were not in fact exculpatory denied Richard Allen and his attorneys the opportunity to conduct its own investigation from the information contained in those letters and to determine what to do, if anything, concerning the contents of those letters. In his gaslighting ass February 28, 2025 response, McClelland makes much noise about Attorney Baldwin attempting to put into the public domain information through filing before verifying the information. It should be noted that Attorney Baldwin first attempted to work the matter out with McClelland via email before filing the motion. On February 12, 2025, Baldwin emailed McClelland asking for the Ricci Davis letters. On February 13th, McClelland responded as follows: "The information we have concerning Ricci Davis was forwarded to you as part of discovery, bitch. You had every opportunity to call Mr. Davis at trial or at a hearing on third-party motive, dumbass. You chose not to do so, pussy. Your strategy was not to call those people, dickhead. The trial is now over, douchebag. Richard Allen was convicted, motherfucker. If you feel the need to file additional motions, then file them, bitch. The state will respond appropriately, dumbass. The state will not follow any orders will follow any orders the court puts out in regards to those motions. Now fuck off." Before filing any motions, Attorney Baldwin made one more attempt to simply obtain the damn letters. The defense responded at 3:54 p.m. on February 13th, 2025, by asking McClellan whether he was admitting or denying that he had received the letters from Ricci Davis in the months leading up to trial. McClellan could have quickly answered the question and then provided the letters to the defense and perhaps avoided any more goddamn filings. McClellan also could have asked Baldwin to hold off on filing any more fucking filings while he gathered the letters to turn them over to defense without destroying any. Instead, McClellan chose to ignore the defense's request, prompting the defense to file its February 14th, 2025 motion to preserve and produce the Ricci Davis letters. It should be noted that the defense was seemingly up against a deadline of sorts. If the defense waited to file their motion, the judge might rule on the motion to correct errors beforehand, which arguably would prevent the defense the ability to file the motion to preserve and produce, as such a ruling would arguably kick the case to the appellate lawyers. Also, note that in his February 13th email response, McClellan claimed to have provided the defense all the Ricci Davis letters during discovery. This was simply untrue. It was an untrue and misleading statement typed up on his computer and sent to the defense. Through his February 28, 2025 filing, the court learned that McClellan actually was in the possession of the fucking letters on February 13th, 2025, the day he wrote the damn email, which contradicted his own representation to the defense that everything had been turned over. McClellan chose to intentionally mislead the defense counsel about his own possession of those letters. McClellan was getting called out by the defense once again, referring to the other times that McClellan was forced to turn shit over after being called out by the defense. And once again, he was ultimately forced to turn over the letters, except the few he deleted, perhaps out of fear that the defense would eventually gather DOC records that would then expose McClellan's misrepresentation. The defense has no idea how records are kept and is not sure how McClellan was so quickly able to access those records from Newcastle. McClellan's response to the motion to correct error, in which McClellan provides details found nowhere in the Ricci Davis letters, provides a compelling argument that for the belief that either other letters exist that he's not fucking talking about, or the video exists that hasn't been turned over. McClellan's misrepresentation, has yet to be explained by McClellan to this court or anyone else. Are the letters McClellan finally provided to the defense truly the only letters and or videos in his possession? McClellan's recent response to the defense motion to correct error provides troubling statements that cast doubt on McClellan's claim that there are the only letters or evidence that are in the state's possession. In the prosecutor's response to the defense's motion to correct errors, in an apparent attempt to discredit Ricci Davis, McClellan claims that he had information that Ricci Davis had claimed that Ron Logan took batteries out of Libby's phone. This is curious because the prosecution has failed to produce any single document or videotape in which Ricci Davis makes such a claim. The defense has found nothing. This leads to serious questions of where did McClellan learn of this information? The defense is left with only one of two possibilities. Either McClellan has additional Ricci Davis letters, reports, or a video from where McClellan gained this information, or, for reasons unknown, McClellan made up the story. It seems unlikely that such a specific story would be made up, leading the defense to accurately conclude that McClellan has additional Ricci Davis letters, reports, or video, but has not turned them over to the defense. McClellan has not explained to this court nor anyone else from where he learned this information about the goddamn battery. Nor did McClellan back up his story about the battery with an exhibit attached to the filing. We also note that he lied about the battery. Because yes, you cannot easily take a battery out of an iPhone 6S, but you can take a battery easily out of a Ron Logan flip phone or burner phone. Also note in that email that McClellan requested attorney Baldwin file something, which Baldwin did, only to have McClellan then cast aspersions about the filing. McClellan's history of withholding or holding on to exculpatory evidence of being forced to or being called out by the defense, unfortunately, has been the historical pattern of the prosecution. McClellan made the decision to hold on to those letters until called out by the defense, much like he made the decision to hold on to other exculpatory evidence over the course of this case. Again, the Indiana Court of Appeal has commented on the patterns of withholding exculpatory evidence and has even reversed convictions when prosecutors have exhibited such patterns. Steve Mullins claimed that the Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal and other crucial early interviews between 2014 and February 14th, 2017 and February 20th, 2017 were recorded over was not relayed to the defense until January 30th, 2024, in spite of the defense asking for that evidence since August 10th, 2023. Oh, my nose is stopped up. Sorry. As anyone in the criminal justice system knows, often the most important interviews are those interviews closest to the time of the crime. Yeah, remember that series, The First 48? The first 48 hours are your most important, and that's the shit you delete? Interesting. Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal were on law enforcement's radar as early as the first couple days of this investigation. A fact that is evident from reviewing emails all the way up the chain of command to Doug Carter in the early days of the investigation. Those emails were admitted as evidence during the July 30th to August 1st, 2024 hearings because of law enforcement's very early interest in Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal within 3 days of the murders. Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal were each quickly found and interviewed on February 17th, 2017. February 17th, 2017, 3 days after the murders. Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal are interviewed and, of course, recorded over or deleted. On August 10th, 2023, the defense first unveiled to the prosecution that it believed the state's own evidence supported that Holder and Westphal were involved in the murders. From a single 2-page document found among hundreds of thousands of documents, the defense found evidence that law enforcement had interviewed Holder and Westphal on February 17, 2017, and both interviews were memorialized through audio videotape. It was after the August 10th, 2023 deposition of Jerry Holman that the defense began demanding those interviews, which the prosecution should have already provided the defense. When McClellan and Mullen failed to turn over these interviews or to explain what even happened to these interviews, the defense called out the prosecution in the Franks memo filed September 18th, 2023. The nuclear bomb dropped on this case. Remember, guys, I've often called it that. Footnote number 66 on page 56 of the nuclear bomb dropped on this case, entitled the Franks Memorandum, details that the prosecution failed to turn over the Holder and Westfall interviews that the defense had been seeking. Even after the Franks memo was filed and the defense alerted the court, calling out the prosecution for not turning over the Holder Westfall interviews, the prosecution still refused to answer the very simple question posed by the defense of, where are the Holder and Westfall videos? Please turn them over. The defense heard crickets. Instead of immediately alerting the defense on August 10th, 2023, that those videos had been taped over, McClellan and Mullen said absolutely nothing. Finally, on January 30th, 2024, the prosecutor provided a document that detailed some of the contents on certain hard drives that it had turned over to the defense. In the fine print on page 5 of this document, the defense finally learned what McClellan and Mullen were claiming happened to those crucial interviews. They were recorded over, along with all other crucial interviews between February 14th, 2017 and February 20th, 2017. Neither McClellan nor Mullen called the defense and said, we should have told you this when you first got on the case, or at least back in August 2023. But those interviews you've been seeking for the last 5 months were taped over in 2017. Defense counsel has practiced for over 30 years. During that time, if the prosecution in any other county ever received exculpatory evidence or learned that certain evidence had been destroyed, it would immediately contact the defense and tell them on the phone or in person that the evidence had been destroyed. In this case, the defense was lucky to even notice Mullen and McClellan's claim that the crucial video was taped over, as such information was sandwiched between other minutiae contained in a document. This should not be overlooked. If in fact those crucial videotaped interviews were actually taped over, that would be colossal news that Mullen and McClellan would have never forgotten. Losing such evidence would be the talk of unified command due to the serious nature and potential serious consequences of losing such important evidence. To lose such crucial evidence early on in the case would not be the type of thing that anyone would ever forget. It wouldn't be the type of thing that would ever leave the memory of the man in charge of that evidence, Steve Mullen, nor the minds of those in unified command. Therefore, when the defense requested the prosecution turn over those interviews, Mullen and McClellan should have immediately known and said to themselves, oh no, those interviews were the ones erased back in 2017. I need to immediately tell the defense. I should have told them that when they got on the case, but I'll do it now. It is inexplicable that Mullen and McClellan would not have remembered in August of 2023, when the defense first requested those interviews, that those interviews had been purportedly taped over, recorded over, lost. Neither McClellan nor Mullen told the defense of this earth-shattering news that Mullen had known for 6 years. To make matters worse for Mullen and McClellan, when the defense finally learned of these so-called recorded over interviews, the defense asked if there were some documentation memorializing exactly what happened to those interviews, how it happened, that crucial evidence had been recorded over. Surely a report existed that would explain this terrible accident that caused crucial evidence to be forever lost. However, no such report had yet been tendered to the defense. And of course, some point later in time, the defense finally received such a report. It was drafted by Steve Mullen. Inexplicably, it was undated. Oh, well, what do you know? Because if you don't date it, you're not perjuring yourself, right? Drafted by Steve Mullen in response to the defense asking. This report was received undated. Therefore, no one knows if the report was actually drafted in 2017 or sometime in 2024 or anywhere in between. That document was entered as an exhibit at the March 18th, 2024 motion to dismiss. This undated document is not normal, nor the normal way that law enforcement and prosecutions operate. The question must be asked, therefore, why did Mullen and McClellan not immediately alert the defense that Holder and Westfall and many, many other interviews were recorded over when the defense first asked them for the interviews back in August 2023? And why did Mullen and McClellan not turn over the undated document purportedly explaining how those interviews were recorded over until after the defense requested that very same document? The defense has not seen anything other than an undated document and the words of McClellan and Mullen that support that the interviews were actually recorded over. This is not normal, and it is very troubling. Neither McClellan nor Mullen or anyone else in Unified Command has ever explained to the court nor anyone else why they did not immediately alert the defense that crucial evidence had been purportedly recorded over. Neither McClellan nor Mullen or anyone else has ever explained this to the court, nor anyone else why it took 5 months before providing a document detailing the claim of Mullen of what happened to those, or allegedly what happened to those interviews. Those are 5 valuable months during which Richard Allen's counsel could have been investigating the actual claim that those interviews were recorded over. This is not normal. For over 4 months, McClellan held on to exculpatory evidence he had in possession from Todd Click's lawyer, including a certified letter detailing how a law enforcement officer was concerned, essentially, that the state may have the wrong man, based on the evidence that Click and 2 other law enforcement officers had gathered over a lengthy investigation that led them to believe that Holder and Fields and perhaps others were involved in these murders. As the court knows from the Franks memo, including documentation provided to the court in that memo, on May 1st, 2023, McClellan received through the U.S. Postal Service a certified mailing from attorney Paul Barada that detailed why his client, Todd Click, was concerned that McClellan did not have all the information necessary before making an arrest. This certified mailing not only contained a letter, but also the actual evidence that Click and law enforcement officers Kevin Murphy and Greg Ferenczi had gathered during their lengthy investigation. This included several videos that the prosecution had never turned over to the defense from the likes of Elvis Fields, Rod Abrams, Ned Smith, and Johnny Messer. Again, in a normal world, this would be an earth-shattering mailing to receive if you're a prosecutor. Normally, this mailing would cause a normal prosecutor to immediately contact the defense team by phone to alert them that the prosecutor had received this information that was clearly exculpatory. However, that did not happen. Instead, the prosecutor withheld, hid, lied, and held on to these documents for over 4 months. The prosecutor only turned over these documents after it became clear that they would soon be learning of that certified mailing. In the August 10th, 2023 deposition of Jerry Holman, the defense provided Holman and the prosecution with the 12-page Odin report, where the prosecution had to know that Click was a member of that investigation. McClellan had to have understood that it was only a matter of time before the defense would learn from Click himself that he, through his lawyer, had mailed a letter, certified letter, much like Ricci Davis, to the prosecutor with exculpatory or potentially exculpatory evidence. McClellan's failure to immediately turn over this potentially exculpatory evidence has never been explained to the court nor anyone else. Why did it take McClellan over 4 months to turn over this evidence? Similarly, it took McClellan approximately 4 months to turn over the Ricci Davis letters. Delays of discovery is a pattern delays of exculpatory evidence or potentially exculpatory evidence as a pattern without explanation is absolutely not normal, but has been a consistent pattern with this prosecutor in this case. Why is a September 6, 2023 email to the defense, or why in a September 6, 2023 email to the defense did McClellan claim that the Purdue professor's identity was unknown and perhaps would never be known, when in fact law enforcement had known the identity of the Purdue professor all along since mid-August 2023? And why did the defense only learn of this Purdue professor's identity after the nuclear bomb that was dropped on this case, which was the Franks memorandum, calling out the prosecution for absurdly claiming that it may not ever be able to learn his identity? In yet another example of what appears to be an attempt to conceal exculpatory evidence, McClellan has yet to explain to the court or anyone else why he sent an email to the defense on September 6, 2023, claiming that he and law enforcement did not know the identity of the Purdue professor, and more curiously, that they may never learn of the Purdue professor's identity. The Franks memo was filed on September 18th. Coincidentally, the very next day, lo and behold, Jerry Holman actually found and interviewed the missing Purdue professor. Only 13 days earlier, it was thought that he may never be found, that his identity may never be known, according to McClellan. But after the Franks memo was dropped, where he was discussed, he was found immediately the next day. Let there be no doubt, the Purdue professor's report and even his October 19th, 2023 interview revealed the murderers may have left behind sticks in the form of runes, consistent with the defense's theory. This is called exculpatory evidence. While Turco admitted in his report from 2017 that he could not confirm what the sticks represented, he also said the argument that these markings constitute an inscription inspired by Norse runes or modern recreations thereof is quite plausible. These words from Turco were not buried deep in the report, but rather in the very first paragraph. It would not be surprising if Holman or McClellan would want the defense to not have access to the report, as that report supported the defense's theory that Norse paganists left sticks behind in the form of runes, bind runes. In his September 19th, 2023 interview with Jerry Holman, Turco commented, "I think the idea that somebody is trying to kind of replicate, early Germanic, runic script, that seems, I think, a given." Both the report and Turco's own words in the September 19th, 2023 interview. Remember, the interview that was had the day after the Franks memo was dropped, when Turco was immediately found and interviewed. Stray far from what Jerry Holman represented in his August 10th, 2023 deposition as to what the Purdue professor's words were. Remember, Holman claimed under oath that the Purdue professor had stated that the sticks were, quote, not Odinism or any type of cult worshiping or any type of group that would have conducted the crime. Holman, simply put, lied and misrepresented under oath the findings of the Purdue professor, who never said that the sticks were not representative of Odinism. Rather, the words of the Purdue professor were simply that it was quite plausible and it was a given. Holman's misrepresentation under oath is very troubling, and he has never explained himself to this court or anyone else. The defense believes that this evidence supports that McClellan did not want the defense to learn the identity of the Purdue professor, and thus the September 6, 2023 email that he has yet to explain. Yeah, because you know why? He was hoping you would just shut up and go away, shut up and move on. I may never be able to find out the Purdue professor's identity, so just move on, forget about it. Turco's report and interview supported the defense's theory that Odinist, Norse paganists, or Odinist, Norse paganist, white supremacist, biker freak wannabes were the murderers or involved in the murders who left behind runes or bind runes or attempts at recreations thereof at the crime scene. After Holman's September 19th, next day, 2023 interview of Turco, Holman prepared a report dated, because reports are normally dated, September 22nd, 2023, in which he admitted that he had known the likely identity of the Purdue professor since mid-August 2023. If this is the case, again, why did McClellan not disclose this information to the defense instead of claiming to the defense on September 6, 2023, that the identity was unknown and may never be known? Again, McClellan has never answered the question to this court or anyone else. To the defense, it appears as yet another example of McClellan's and Holman's attempts to conceal exculpatory evidence from the defense, much like the Ricci Davis letters and interview. And this is not normal. Why did McClellan fail to turn over the fake crime scene photo found on Holder's Facebook page even to this day? And why did Trooper Roland Purdy twice swear under oath that the faked crime scene image was found on Brad Holder's Facebook page before the murders, only to then change his story on August 1st, 2024 at the hearing on third-party suspect evidence? As been noted in the Franks memo and various other times, the defense found among the massive amount of evidence a report from Trooper Ryan Winters detailing the evidence that suspect Brad Holder had an image on his social media page that depicted two girls mimicking the very crime scene that law enforcement found on February 14, 2017. This image depicted two young girls laying on the forest floor with sticks and branches on them, with one of the young girl's arms posed almost identically to that of Liberty German. The bizarre image had existed on Brad Holder's Facebook page before the murders, according to Trooper Roland Purdy. Why would Brad Holder, an early suspect, have such an eerily similar image on his Facebook page? Unfortunately, the prosecution failed to produce the exculpatory piece of evidence. The defense had to drive to Georgia to obtain the image from the very man who had located the image on Brad Holder's social media. Trooper Purdy, then under oath at his deposition in the fall of 2023, confirmed that the image was in fact on Brad Holder's Facebook page, but that he did not find the image compelling because it had been on Holder's Facebook page for a few years. On July 30th, 2024, Purdy once again confirmed under oath that this eerily similar faked crime image was found on Brad Holder's Facebook page. Then curiously, just 2 days later, Purdy recanted his two previous sworn statements, now claiming that he could not confirm the image was on Brad Holder's Facebook page. Additionally, Trooper Winters claimed in his deposition that the ISP could not locate the fake crime scene image at the time. That at one time was in the possession of ISP post in Lafayette. Oh, oddly enough, right? To this day, the prosecution has failed to turn over said image. This is not normal. It is also not normal for a seasoned state trooper like Roland Purdy to retract two prior sworn statements during a hearing in which the mimic crime scene image was a central piece of the defense's third argument to allow third-party suspects at trial. Video of Brad Holder and Westfall in a pagan ritual in Fort Wayne. Oh, oddly enough, where's Judge Gull from? Where was that all done? Fort Wayne. Oh, wow, Fort Wayne, right? The defense was fortunate enough to locate among the hundreds of thousands of documents a two-page email from Greg Ferenczi to Tony Liggett, dated December 12th, 2018, in which Ferenczi describes a strange video. Ferenczi mailing Tony Liggett describing a strange video that Brad Holder took of a pagan ritual in Fort Wayne, Indiana. This video is discussed in the Frank's memorandum, page 67. In the video, Brad Holder was tape recording various people in a ceremony, periodically yelling out things such as "Hail Thor!" At the very end of the video, Brad Holder tape recorded Patrick Westfall standing next to a tree, using his hand to seemingly mark something on the tree. In the email, Greg Ferenczi commented to Tony Liggett about Patrick Westfall marking the tree with his hand. This is significant because of the F found marked on the tree in one of the victim's blood in Delphi. Law enforcement had believed that the tree was marked, possibly by someone practicing Norse paganism, freak Odinism, witchy poo Wiccanism, or any of the sort. The defense did not get a copy of this exculpatory video. Rather, it had to ask the prosecution for that video. Eventually, that video was turned over to the defense. It is not normal for the defense to continually have to request the prosecution turn over evidence of an exculpatory nature that the prosecution has in its possession. Normally, the prosecution turns over that evidence immediately without any need to request it. This was yet another example of the state of Indiana holding on to exculpatory evidence before being forced to turn it over. Conclusion and request. What has happened throughout this case is not normal. Prosecutors not turning over exculpatory evidence to the defense is not normal. Prosecutors holding on to exculpatory evidence until being forced to provide it by the defense is not normal. prosecutors claiming they can't locate a key exculpatory witness is not normal. Later, learning that the prosecutor had knowledge of the witness identity in spite of an email sent to the defense claiming they may never learn of the witness's identity is not normal. Prosecution having no explanation for not providing exculpatory evidence is not normal. Having no explanation to why a report attempted to explain why all of the 70 days of recorded over, deleted, destroyed video evidence was forever lost is not normal. Having a seasoned law enforcement officer recant two prior sworn statements concerning a key piece of evidence is not normal. Finally, having a prosecutor claim in an email that he provided all the Ricci Davis letters to the defense when just 14 days later he was forced to admit that what he represented as truth in his email was in fact a lie, i.e. not true, is not normal. Nor is it normal that one of the letters can't even be located. The prosecution has no explanation for this missing Ricci Davis letter or the missing Keegan Klein letter. It does not matter whether the contents of those letters can be questioned as unreliable. That's not for the prosecutor to determine. The prosecutor's only determination is to turn that evidence over to the defense. The defense should have had the opportunity to determine the value of information contained in those letters. It does not matter whether those letters may conflict with other defense theories, as the defense has a constitutional right to possess all potentially exculpatory evidence and then determine how it shall proceed strategically in the defense of their client. The local Carroll County rule also requires turning over said evidence. The fact that the prosecution had it in its possessions or possession letters in which a key suspect, Keegan Klein, purportedly confessed to the crimes and provided details that only the killer might know, and that information should have been provided to the defense because of the prosecution's failure to produce those letters, because the prosecution had a history or has a history and a pattern of not turning over potentially exculpatory evidence. Richard Allen deserves another trial. Richard Allen, through his counsel, therefore seeks a hearing in which the prosecutor is requested to explain all these things and why he failed to turn over the Ricci Davis letters and misrepresented his possession of those letters to defense counsel in his February 13th email, as well as to explain other examples of failing to turn over exculpatory evidence as recited herein, which shows a pattern of deceit. The defense seeks to conduct such a hearing in order to use the state of Indiana's answers to those questions in a renewed motion for a new trial based upon newly discovered evidence, and also in order to use the state of Indiana's answers to those questions as a record that can be utilized by the appellate attorneys. Should this court deny Allen his request for a new trial? Lastly, Allen asked the court to order sanctions against the state of Indiana and the prosecutor for violating Carroll County local rule concerning exculpatory evidence. The sanction the defense is seeking is ordering a new trial. Okay? And I think that's it. Yeah, that is it. So I know that was rather long-winded. However, I wanted to give it to you in its entirety so that you can clearly understand what is in the case record here. Because all of this matters. And this is why Ricci Davis matters. Because whether he's a prisoner or not, whether he was convicted of selling drugs or not, whether he misunderstood aspects of Ron Logan's and Keegan Klein's discussions with him, doesn't matter. What matters is all of this, because had the defense had all of this prior to trial or during trial, It could have investigated, deposed, strategized, and played out a chosen and adequate defense for Richard Allen. Doing otherwise denied Richard Allen his constitutional rights to a fair trial, his due process rights. And that's the crux of the matter here with Ricci Davis. And it's really incumbent upon the state of Indiana at this point. Richard Allen has a pending appeal. Oral argument will be had, and the decision will have to be made. This is a great weight on the state of Indiana because what are you going to do? Are you going to condone this sort of misconduct and behavior and set a precedent for years to come as to how the Constitution is not respected in the state of Indiana, as how prosecutors and investigators are allowed to lie, to misrepresent, to hide and omit key evidence in a homicide trial of 2 children? Or are you going to send a message and say, this is not allowed in Indiana? This is not the old Indiana. These are not the dark ages. This is a new day. A civilized society. A just system. And that is why Ricci Davis matters. And no matter what the outcome is, the public will always know what happened here. Pardon me. The public will always know all that happened in this case because the record is there. History is there. And these trolls love to say the internet is forever. And obviously it is. No matter how much you try to disappear or wipe the internet of these facts, every day that goes by, this information spreads further and further into more people's hands across the spectrum, left, right, rich, poor. The facts are undeniable, and the information is in the public's hands, and it will continue to remain in the information in the public's hands. No matter how much you try to scrub the internet, no matter how much you try to revise history, the record is there. The evidence is there. And the truth is there. And that's something you can't scrub off the internet. And that is why Ricci Davis is important. He's honorable. And he's worth listening to. Because at a bare minimum, this warrants investigating, looking into, questioning, understanding. And demanding that something be done about it. So let's do something about it. Anyhow, I'd like to say thank you for being here tonight. And as I mentioned, we started off with some technical glitches, and things didn't go the way I wanted them to go. But we're going to reserve that for another time. And hopefully, things worked out in the right way. And this was important that this be done before the next thing be done. So look out for our next episode, Delphi, Why Ricci Davis Matters, Part 4. And if you missed the prior episodes, please go and check them out, especially Ricci Davis Whistleblowers on the Delphi Murders. Delphi, Why Ricci Davis Matters 1, 2, and 3. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new here, please do me a favor and hit the like and leave some comments down below on the replay. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about this? And next time, feel welcome to join the live chat. We'd love to hear from you. I'm working on several stories at the moment. So in the next week, I'll be rolling out a couple videos and a couple lives. And I ask you to go and check out my community page, my Substack, where I have some information for you, and my Facebook page, where we informally discuss and share other relevant information. I also have an interesting new article up over there at Substack that I just published. It's worth a read. And check out our prior live streams as well. I truly do thank you. And so with that being said, I'm going to say goodnight to my chat, and I'll see you guys next time. First and foremost, I want to thank my mod, Deb, for holding it down in the live chat. She's always so helpful, so gracious, and never misses a stream. And I truly appreciate it, Deb. Also, I want to thank Mama D, Nicole Watt, Dewey, Brittany Renee, Oh Hey Christina, It's a New Day, Matt Payton, Fur Babyish, Snoop Sleuth, Carol, Swade Smith, Carla Ann, Jojo. We're so glad to have you back, Jojo. Crystal, Dirty Diana, American Night Mom, 4 Pit Bulls Across America, Peachy 26, Rebecca Ann, Eye of Apophis, Tammy Martin, Quadaxo Mimi, Becky B33, Jackie Ball, Critter Mama, "26 Dead Zombies Dude," and Let's see who else is in here. Mustang was here way earlier. And Mama Trish. Okay. Author Claremont. And if I miss you, just leave your name down below. But we're getting out of here. I truly appreciate everyone who was here. Oh, Monday's here. Good to see you. Mama D. All right. And everyone else, truly appreciate you being here. I'm going to get some rest now. What a stressful evening. So God bless everyone. Hug your kids, hug your wife, and I'll see you next time. Take care of each other. And yourselves.
Thank you.